Around mid-July, one of my buddies who had moved asked me to DM a game via Discord for him and some new friends he had made, to give him a break from forever DMing and get me into the group. Naturally, I agreed because I had also just moved and had nobody to hang out with. So I set up the Discord server, invited everybody, and told them to contact me so we could work out characters and stuff one-on-one to have them ready for Session 0, where we'll do intros and hammer out what we want for the campaign. As of this day, none of them have contacted me to work on anything. I've asked multiple times directly and for any info, or even what they want to just play as. I even asked if there's anything they want to request or veto for the game. One of them posted cool when I pitched the setting and starting town. Beyond that, nothing. Even worse, I asked my friend about it and they only asked him about the setting. They have explicitly made no effort. They have literally given me nothing. You know, when the DM asks if there's anything the party wants to veto for the campaign, I don't think the DM expected the party would respond by basically just vetoing participation in the game entirely. All ye tavern goers out there, if you're going to participate in a D&D game, please actually participate in the game. Otherwise, I don't really know the point of you being there. This happened over the past weekend. I'm a GM that ran a Delta Green one-shot for a few friends this hollow weekend. For context, Delta Green is a modern spin on the Call of the Cthulhu system. Players take the role of agents in a clandestine government conspiracy to investigate and contain unnatural or paranormal events. The two main characters of this story are a married couple. I'll call the husband Tex and his wife Anne. Names are changed for anonymity, yada yada. The module we played was a haunted house investigation that I thought was perfect for Halloween. Music from a darkened room for those interested. I had played TTRPGs with everyone at the table previously, and we generally meshed very well. However, Anne had a persistent issue of modeling her in-game characters off of herself and her life. With a modern setting of Delta Green, she practically plugged herself into the game. This is normally not an issue in my opinion, but Anne is the type to take it personally if anything happens to her in-game representation of herself. One particular aspect of Anne's self-insert manifested in the Delta Green bonds system. Bonds, without getting heavily into game mechanics, are an in-game player's close friends and family, used as sanity buffers. Anne had based all of her bonds off of real-life analogs, among which was her husband, aka Tex, in real life. You can probably see where this is going. The night had been going swell for a few hours. Everyone at the table seemed to be having a really good time. I had observed that Anne was looking a little uncomfortable with the graphic descriptions within the module. I had given several content warnings before we started and continually asked, but she had assured me she was doing well as the night progressed. The night came to a head when I utilized a mechanic of the haunted house to essentially lure a bond in order to bait an agent to go into the house alone. I had chosen Anne's husband to be the victim of the lure. In-game, the agents are resting at a local motel bar near the haunted house for the night, when Anne receives a call from her husband telling her he was in the house. In a hurry, Anne takes one of the agent's two cars and hauls ass to the house in order to rescue her husband. The group had noticed Anne peeling away from the motel and promptly followed in the remaining vehicle to the house. Tex is in first and bursts through the entrance to see Anne struggling with an obviously possessed husband in unarmed combat. Tex jumps in to wrest the husband off of Anne. Tex then follows up by saying, "I would like to push him away from us," unholster my revolver, and fan fire into this deranged man. Before I can get a word in, Anne explodes. She screams out, "That's you! Why are you killing yourself? What's wrong with you? You don't have to shoot him," and then proceeds to break down out of the game and starts crying at the table. I like how the OP said, "Oh, you probably know where this is going," but that escalated faster than a train wreck. So no, I did not see this coming. The mood was all over the place. Initially, a couple of us laughed at Tex's insane actions, but it went a full 180 in a span of a few seconds. A couple of girls rushed to calm Anne, and Tex attempted to placate her by running the usual gamut of "it's a game" excuses, but Anne lamented that her husband was now dead, and that she felt completely betrayed by her actual husband. I agreed that Tex's actions were excessive and offered to retcon that portion. I really did not intend for anyone to murder the husband, and the possession would have been easily removed had they simply tried, but the damage the damage was done. Anne was no longer in the mood to play. So the group settled down to watch horror films for the remainder of the night. That led to another flare-up as Anne proclaimed that she was done with horror for the whole year. I stuck around for maybe half an hour after that, then took my leave as it had gotten pretty awkward after the tantrums. In hindsight, I should not have made Anne's bond the target of the house, but Anne was chosen through a series of roles. If I had elected to do nothing to her, that would be no better than favoritism in my opinion. Plus, everyone played the game knowing full well that this is make-believe. I guess some people just cannot separate the facts from the theater of the mind. TLDR, husband kills an in-game representation of himself in a haunted house scenario, and his own wife flips out. I have always said that while separating yourself from your characters is important, it's not something that you can ever fully achieve. At the end of the day, you are playing these characters, they're always going to have pieces of yourself. However, at the same time, when you connect yourself to your character this much in a horror setting where things can go horribly wrong, well, that's asking for trouble. Of course, I do agree with the OP that maybe the husband's actions were a little extreme. However, while I sympathize with really caring about a game and its characters, I don't think you should care to that degree. I also respect the attempt to keep the night going, but honestly, after a freakout like that, it's kind of hard to keep the vibe anything but awkward. Even watching movies can just become a kind of difficult endeavor when there is, frankly, any degree of hostility in the room. So, for some background on this experience, at the time I had very little experience with Dungeons & Dragons. I played a one-shot and watched several videos with D&D stories and watched a little bit of Critical Role. I was invited to play one session at a game that some of my friends were playing. The DM, I was told, had over 10 years of experience, and the campaign took place in a world that he was developing over the years and was based on a realistic/medieval fantasy world. The party consisted of the DM, my two friends, and a friend of the DM who I will refer to as the Paladin. They had been playing for about 3 years together and were level 12. They seemed to complain a lot about several aspects of the game, but they also had some interesting stories to tell, so I got the sense that they were just going through a low point in their campaign. So I made a level 12 druid and joined them. I had a blast in my first session, and I could roleplay my character well enough to create some very funny situations as he met with these eccentric adventurers. So I asked the DM if I could continue with them, and he accepted me. Oh boy, I had no idea what I was signing up for. After the first couple of sessions, which were, they were okay, honestly, I feel like the only reason that I enjoyed these first few sessions was my excitement to play D&D with friends. However, after the excitement had gone away, I realized how messed up this DM's game was. I could honestly write a whole book about all the things that happened, but I tried my best to keep this short. The sessions seemed to run on almost a fixed schedule. For the first 3 to 4 hours, we would be forced to roleplay with ourselves or with random NPCs, which we had no interest in. Then we were allowed to head towards a place of interest, where we would then battle and then close the session. The DM was also fixated on how we would solve each problem, giving us no wiggle room to devise our own solutions. There was a time when we would find a plot-relevant NPC that we knew had been hiding in a certain village. We spent 4 whole sessions looking around the village, exploring locations, and talking with NPCs without making any progress whatsoever. Until that is, we talked with the appropriate NPC, which was the village's nutcase, who gave us the clue that revealed the location that we actually needed. The DM prided himself on running a world driven by the characters and their decisions, but he would railroad everything and got frustrated and angry when we did not play along. At one instance, he presented us with a plot hook that involved us visiting an imprisoned archdemon in a different realm. He implied the fiend could give us information on how to stop the demon invasion in our realm. Naturally, we tried to gather some information ourselves by asking relevant NPCs, like high-ranking paladins that have dealt with demons before. They all said the same thing. Demons will always trick you no matter what, and it is impossible to trick them. They are the master of lies, and demonic realms are too dangerous to visit. You wouldn't last a day. So we decided that we would not follow that quest, as it seemed like a crazy task. After the first session, I explained to him that our characters couldn't possibly complete that task, especially due to how he presented us the hook. He then explained with a scolding tone, "You are adventurers, and you are supposed to take risky missions." After several sessions, we infiltrate a demonic building in our realm, trying to destroy it. After we disable all the runic crystals and slay the demons inside, we try to exit the building. Surprise, surprise, the exit is closed, and when we find a way out, we find ourselves in a demonic realm. The NPCs themselves always seemed to be against us no matter what we were trying to achieve. They were constantly suspicious and scorned us while making remarks about how unintelligent we were and how we misunderstood the situation. Any allied NPC was a character from one of his old players, or some sort of DMPC with class levels and homebrew spells that the DM loves to use. In one instance, we were just thrown out of an opposing guild after we tried to talk with their leader. He naturally refused to talk to any of us and ordered his men to kick us out. We chose to make it a bit harder for them, so my druid transformed into a giant bear and just shat on the floor. Then a wizard cast Reduce on me, and the DM describes that my character becomes small enough to fit in the palm of his hand and be thrown out the window. What? I ask. That's how the spell works. To which the DM replies, yes, that's true for the normal spell, but he is a high-level wizard. The DMPC would also straight up prevent player character actions. At one point, our cleric wants to cast Fireball to free our paladin from a gelatinous cube that had him trapped when everything else had failed. The DMPCs pinned the cleric down to the floor while shouting at us, he's gone crazy, and then proceeded to knock him unconscious in one hit. I mean, are we the NPCs? On the other hand, our spells and abilities are severely limited. We quickly realized that he was purposefully buffing the monsters, so spells he didn't like would not work. Does the bard have some spells that could easily defeat a monster like Polymorph? Well, that monster now throws with advantage, and plus 10. I tried locating the enemy boss after he appeared before us in the form of an illusion with locate creature. He narrates that we can track the boss and are now right outside his door, and ends the session there. On our next session, we find ourselves still trying to track where the boss is located, and we are forced to chase after one of his minions that leads us there, as our locate creature is actually useless. All the battles are scripted, and what we do does not matter. He keeps all the monster hit points and stats in his head because it's easy for him. All the bosses have immunity until he decides they don't. All of our spells would fail, and they would stay alive even after taking 500 damage. And of course, we can't prevent any of the cool scenes he has already prepped. In some instances, he even had us lose big boss fights so that our DM NPC allies could come and rescue us. Only then were we allowed to turn the tides of battle. The only character able to deal damage was his friend, the Paladin. He had a Holy Avenger and several homebrew magic items with haste that lasted an hour and constantly cheated with his spell slots and damage rolls. When we confronted the DM and explained how much the Paladin was cheating, he promised he would talk to him. However, nothing changed. The Paladin kept landing 150 damage on a hit. Things kept piling on. He never kept any notes, which meant he was constantly forgetting things like who our enemy was, important things our characters had achieved, and even the items that we just had. And if he could not remember, then one of the trusted players had to come to your defense, or that thing was going to be evaporated. After these 6 months, I decided I had enough of this. I could no longer spend 6 hours every weekend sitting at a table where the DM could not care less about the players and was only interested in his story. I didn't want to create a sour mood for the other players who had been in this campaign for 4 whole years. So I told him that I was very busy and couldn't continue for some reason and just never returned. My friends pushed through the next few months until the campaign ended. They were all very disappointed and told me they never wanted to play with that DM again. Looking back at it now, I think the main problem was that the DM was just unable to talk to us or admit he made a mistake and improve his DMing. After that experience, I decided I would take matters into my own hands. I got Curse of Strahd, and I am DMing it for my friends from that campaign book, and we are finally enjoying ourselves. TLDR, DM runs the campaign like reading from a book. The player characters become NPCs, and the NPCs become player characters. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we found Airship Light. This story bears a lot of similarities to the classic DMPC story, minus all of the nice guy incel stuff. Look, the bottom line is that if your player characters are not the main characters of their story, then there's not much point to running that game. I do not think the vast majority of D&D players like being the side character in a story that's supposed to be about them. I mean, people get bothered when main character syndrome happens with a player. When it happens with a DM and their NPCs, the game just becomes unplayable. Also, railroading out the wazoo. There are definitely linear campaigns. I run a campaign that's pretty linear myself, especially when I'm doing mini campaigns like for a stream or something. However, I still offer choices because a lot of the beauty of this game are the choices the players make and how those affect the story moving forward. Not every game needs to be open world or sandbox. However, you do want to have some choice for your games. You want your players to have agency. Without that agency, just like with the DMPCs, there's not much reason for them to stick around. I mean, apparently some of these players stuck around for 4 years, but they're a unique case. Hi everyone, so I have never posted one of these before, so bear with me. So I am the Dungeon Master for a fully homebrew campaign. I tend to be more lenient than many DMs out there and let players use species they can't use normally, create things that you wouldn't normally see, etc, etc. So one of the players has stretched the point of homebrew that I allow with characters by essentially recreating an anime character from a popular anime. I did not want to allow this at first, but he did promise to try and homebrew it to be different, and hasn't done so as of yet. There are other things to this as well. We'll call this person Lex, by the way. So Lex has caused other issues in the party in and out of character. Lex and I first met with him setting off some red flags in my mind, but I didn't think anything of it considering I'm normally very distrustful of others when I first meet them. However, Lex has continued to drop these red flags left and right. At first, I had 5 players, an average amount. I promise this was relevant. The party was made up of a non-binary gremlin, 3 males and 1 female. A strange balance in itself. We shall call the female Gorgon. So Gorgon plays a tiefling bard. No, her character's not that kind of character, mostly. So Lex's character is a human fighter that has a demonic amulet, so Gorgon can sense its presence. Lex has decided to try and romance this player character. Gorgon is uncomfortable with this idea. Lex has made several not-so-secret advances on Gorgon in their private messages, which Lex does attempt to deny. Lex also has main character syndrome, always takes the spotlight, makes all the others uncomfortable, and gets extremely annoyed when something doesn't go his way. He throws a temper tantrum to rival that of a toddler. He has stated that if his character dies, that we either reset the entire campaign or he gets an immediate non-death save revive. He makes sure to mention that if he doesn't get his way, he will leave this party entirely. Mind you, Lex is 21. He is not acting his age. Recently, we added 2 new players to the campaign. Gender does not matter with this instance, but Lex, when told of these new players, freaked out. He started complaining and making everything a problem, going on and on about the 2 new people threatening the integrity of the group forevermore. He claimed that they will mess up the schedule, when in reality, the scheduling problems we have to work with is making sure that we have time to keep him in time with the rest of the party, considering he lives across the pond. I sent out a forum to the group asking when everyone is ready for the next session. Make a guess who screwed up with scheduling and made it a problem. It was Lex. Lex once again has thrown things off. Lex constantly makes himself the center of attention in and out of the campaign. He brags about everything, belittles the others, makes a mockery of LGBTQ+ stuff, claims to have big mental health issues when everyone knows he does not. Lex just lies about a large portion of, well, everything. He claims to have all these problems when he does the exact opposite in a number of other situations, and he has never shown otherwise. As a side note, this world is something that I have put all of my love into. I try my hardest to make sure I have everything prepared. I am ready for improv, and I do it constantly, more than one might think. I have shown this to a number of people. Lex is the only one to try and change things that he has no right to have control over too. So, am I the a-hole if I decide to kick this player? I apologize for putting this out there. I am at my wit's end trying to figure out everything, and I am 99% sure I missed several things in my frantic mode of trying to put everything together in one cohesive thought process thing. I completely empathize with the OP on that one. I also have a big problem with putting everything together when I'm in panic mode. But anyway, look, point is, let's ease their mind. The results of this should be rather obvious, but here it is anyway. Drumroll, please. Not the asshole! Yet. You will be the asshole if you don't kick this guy out, quite frankly. This dude is not great. We've got unwanted flirting. We've got main character syndrome. We've got homophobia. We have everything. Well, not everything. He doesn't cheat. I mean, there's that. That's nice. Yeah, but anyway, most of the gang is here, and it's not a good combination, and keeping this guy in the group will result in you bleeding players. People don't want to stick around when someone like this is dominating their gaming group, trying to be the main character, and just being a general dick to everyone around them, seemingly including the Dungeon Master. I understand the hesitance to want to kick someone out of the group. I have faced the same hesitation myself, but at the end of the day, it is something that must be done. You need to get rid of this guy, otherwise he might just ruin the game for both you and for your players. I run paid games on Roll20 as a bit of fun for beer money. The vast majority of my players are fantastic people who just couldn't find another DM, or who are just tired of groups combusting due to drama or scheduling issues. Some of them, however, are the kind of people who have been kicked from every other table. That guy starts off strong by letting us know that he's had 8 different groups in the last 2 months, and he just doesn't understand why he's had such bad luck. After we're discussing the lore of the world and doing the usual Session 0 character creation stuff, he regales us with the story of his new character, which was just his character from an old game, so he didn't really pay attention to any of the descriptions or locations or the backstory of the world when he chose to play boring McHalf-Orc the Barbarian. The rest of the party, on the other hand, decide to play a group of bounty hunters. When I'm running a homebrew sandbox setting, I like to let the players choose where they start. Since they were bounty hunters, they choose to start in the post-apocalyptic desert ruin of the Old Kings. Basically Pompeii, Atlantis, and Old Valyria mixed together. I'd drawn heavy inspiration from ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Indus Valley civilization for this area, so naturally, when I was doing the art for the NPCs, I drew on those inspirations. In other words, many of the NPCs from that area were not white. So the party is looking around town, doing a bit of shopping to gear up for the bounty that they've been hired for when they meet the first named NPC. I pull up the artwork, and that guy literally says, "Ew." I ask him what's wrong, and he just brushes it off. Next NPC gets a big sigh. The third NPC gets treated so rudely that guy's barbarian has now made an enemy for life. By the second session and 14-ish NPCs later, he snaps. "Can you cut the crap already?" I don't understand. What are you talking about? I'm really tired of this BS. I play D&D to escape the real world. Like, when I imagine fantasy, I don't imagine, you know... At this point, he lowers his voice to a weird, creepy whisper. "Those people. I picture knights and wizards and stuff." Yeah, but there are knights and wizards and stuff. No, I mean real heroes. Like, I just can't picture these NPCs in a proper high fantasy setting like Game of Thrones. Yeah, okay, dude. Definitely. Right. Well, there was about 5 more minutes of this guy digging his hole deeper. Apparently, he'd imagined the entirety of Essos as white. Still confused by that one. And his entire idea of an immersive fantasy realm was basically the 90s version of the Arthurian or Viking eras without any influence from real-world politics. He thought that I was making some kind of woke political point about diversity. After a thorough roasting from every other player at the table, everyone including that guy agreed the group was not the one for him. He rode off into the sunset to go bother someone else. So besides the only white people in Westeros nonsense, let's get into... I mean, I don't really know what else there is to get into here. When you're racist, people don't like you as often, typically. People don't like racism. So when you're racist, you might get kicked out of D&D groups more often. It's not bad luck, it's just people don't like you, and, well, you're allowed to dislike them right back, and that's about it. You can't force them to play with you. Though I'm sure you guys don't have a problem with that, because again, you guys watch Crispy's Tavern, and that makes you guys awesome. Just at the end here, there are definitely people out there whose ideal fantasy is that minorities don't exist in the fantasy world. And if that is your fantasy, your ideal, the thing you want to embody in your free time, I'm going to just go on a limb and say that you're not worth spending much free time with in the first place. Alright, and that's going to be it for today's episode of RPG Horror Stories. If you guys enjoyed it, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of my content, then you can check out Shadow over Carconos, my actual play D&D podcast. The finale is coming up, so if you want to get caught up, it's linked in the cards. And while you're there, subscribe to Crispy's Tavern to get more of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down to the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment. It's still fantasy, dude, to let me know you made it to the end of the video. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.